My name is Christopher Högman. I'm an artist born in Stockholm, Sweden. My work process is never quite the same. Sometimes it starts in a story that I read or even in images in my head that I see. Usually I used to do some work in Photoshop in the computer just to create a composition. I take things from books or images online and create a sketch. Sometimes I use the iPad. Recently I've also started using AI as well to use it as a tool to create a composition. Then when it comes to finishing the painting, it's always the hardest part. I think the painting needs to breathe somehow. Finding the right stage where it's not too compressed and it still has some room to breathe. I think that's the hardest part about the painting. The reason I choose to be quite vague with my paintings, with the facial features, is very intentional. When you can't really tell what the figures and beings are thinking or feeling, I think it starts something in the viewer's mind that they start to wonder what's going on in this painting. Why does this figure look like this? And I think like using the vagueness of the facial features is a kind of, because there's such a small difference from what makes a smile. It's a matter of millimeters, and I think when you're very vague about it in a painting, I think it's possible to read the painting in many different ways, and I think that's something that I play with when I do my paintings. They're all imaginary places, and sometimes I get inspired by photos that I see, and I think the spaces, they work as a kind of second character, adds intrigue to the scene. For my figures to be grounded and kind of interact with the space around them, I think a space is important. And I think I use the same vagueness in the spaces as well, because if you do not really define what the different things are in the space, I think it opens more possibilities for the viewer to kind of read their own situation into the painting. People can see a difference in my work more recently. I think it's natural for an artist to change things up a bit. It's about the struggle of being vague and being robust at the same time. I think like finding the balance. I don't want to give too much away of what is actually going on. I want there to be a vagueness, and at the same time I don't want it to not read at all, as be impossible to read what it is that is actually happening. So it's something that I constantly work with, and it's something that will always evolve in my work. I will always go back and forth from being more figurative and more robust in my work to being more vague and more abstract. It's just a natural part of my paintings. I try to always be open, and I try to always take my paintings in a new direction, and it's quite natural that the paintings evolve into different looking things. So early on in my career, I struggled with the thought that someday oil paintings might not even be viewed in real life anymore, and I struggled with the thought a lot, and I started to experimenting with digital 3D printed paintings, because my thought process was that assuming the technology advance in a similar rate that it has been, sooner or later it won't matter really if it's an oil painting or if it's a digital production. So it was something that I worked with for quite a while, and it's something I still have thoughts about. And I created a canvas in my studio with oil paint, and then I sent it away to Canada with a company that scanned it. And I used the digital files to essentially sample and create a new composition painting with an iPad. And this was like 7 years ago. I still struggle with the idea that sometime that oil painting might go away, because it's something that I really love. Right now I'm just focusing on being in the now and enjoying oil painting for what it is, and I think there's something about it being tactile and an active movement that you do. I think that is what currently makes it worth it for me to paint. I think if you zoom out and look at it from a very big perspective, when photography came, artists, there was a big debate whether you should use photography or not when painting, and obviously people started using photographs as reference for painting, and I think it's inevitable that whatever new technological discovery or advancement that happens, it's natural that obviously it will feel a bit strange for artists when there's something new that for a few years ago you couldn't even dream of. Now it's possible to create the compositions in a few minutes. Like also with Photoshop, it was something that was a bit frowned upon using in the beginning when creating compositions, and now it's very common for artists to use it, and I think it will be the same for AI. Just about finding the right way to use it that works for you. I think it's can be discouraging when you create something and with AI and you start wondering, why am I even painting? But I think as time passes, you will find a way to use it in the painting in a way that something that is very natural and something that is useful as well. I suppose my message with when I'm painting is to make people feel the sense of, or reconnect with the inner child in them. And children are always very open, they're very curious. That's something that we need more of in the world. If we just could be a bit more open and curious, a lot of the problems in the world would get solved. Hopefully my paintings, when people watch them, they look at the figures, they look at the landscape, they look at the rooms, and they start to question what's going on. Why does this person look like this? Why is this person feeling like this? If I can achieve someone to at least look at herself and try to be more open when they view something, I have succeeded in my paintings. In my opinion, the art world, it needs to be less complicated. At the end of the day, it's just about creating something that you enjoy and that others enjoy, and it doesn't really need to be more complicated than that. In reality, it's very simple. It's a form of expression. It's poetry. It's music. It's just everything. It's very simple.